You have to see the wizard.
If you were to watch 1939's The Wizard of Oz, and then immediately after watch The Avengers, you would clearly see some tremendous differences in the quality of the filmmaking. Technology within the film industry has advanced greatly over the last century, allowing movies to tell greater, more realistic stories than ever before. But are these technological advancements actually making movies better? No, absolutely not. I am an unbiased narrator. I have no opinion here. You be the judge. Here's a look at how the technology behind modern-day filmmaking might just be ruining the art of movies. Jeffrey Katzenberg, DreamWorks co-founder and movie mogul, said, "Movies suck. It's unbelievable how bad movies have been. Right now, today, it's a particularly dreary moment for the industry." You know what? That's an old quote. Never mind. Here's one. Newsweek. Movies suck now, and they're only going to get worse. 2015. That's almost like 10 years ago. Man, time flies. The Literary Hub. A new book is out. A film executive wants to know, why do most movies suck? 2020. Okay, here's one. BigThink.com. Why most modern movies suck. Okay, you know what? Clearly, there's a problem in Hollywood, and it's been a problem for a really long freaking time. There's definitely something going on that is diminishing people's interest in going to the movies. In 2022, the LA Times said, "Box office reality check, not enough hits, and a movie shortage." Forbes blamed the 2023 box office slump on the months-long Hollywood strikes, numerous film delays, and more than a few surprise flops. Well, surprise to some people anyway, but not much of a surprise to those of us who are paying attention.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Even before the government-mandated shutdowns of 2020, theater attendance was hitting record lows. Vanity Fair wrote in 2017, "With theater attendance at a two-decade low and profits dwindling, the kind of disruption that hit music, publishing, and other industries is already reshaping the entertainment business." To put it bluntly, movies have been in decline for a while. And the frustrating thing is that Hollywood keeps looking toward new technologies, new special effects, bigger and more expensive productions, and stupid gimmicks, thinking those things are going to fix the problem. But that's not really what audiences want. So what in the Disney is going on? And oh my head, there are many answers, I kid you not. All the articles I just cited and literally thousands more have different explanations as to what the problem is. But I think the great Matthew McConaughey, who whistles at the end of his S's, was on to something during his acceptance speech for Best Actor at the Critics' Choice Awards all the way back in 2014. He addressed why he made the jump from movies to television.
But I'm talking about quality of television today. Television's raising the bar on the character-driven drama series. It just is.
Other movie stars like Winona Ryder, Anthony Hopkins, Billy Bob Thornton, and others have made the leap to television as well, a move that just a decade or two ago would have been seen as a step back in an actor's career. But not anymore. Today, the tides have turned, and I think there's one major contributing factor to why the quality of movies has plunged and the quality of television has been on the rise, and that is technology itself. And I'm going to circle back to this TV anecdote in a minute. Hang on, it'll all make sense, I hope. I want to take a magnifying glass to three major components of movie making and how they may be contributing to the demise of cinema. Let me begin with computer-generated imagery, also known as CGI. In the original Superman movie, the mix of effects works, model making, and in-camera tricks involved much forethought and planning. Were that film to be made now, there wouldn't be anywhere near the level of innovation and skill required to do what they did, because to make today's audiences believe a man can fly is
all too easy.
Computers are being employed to create effects haphazardly, just because the tools are easily available. This has given rise to less creative filmmaking. But before I look at CGI any further, let me make one thing clear. CGI can be totally awesome. When it comes to the debate over computer graphics versus practical effects, we can't deny that both methods are capable of accomplishing the same thing when used properly. So let's clarify something. Practical effects consist of props, models, puppets, costumes, and anything and everything that the creative people behind the effect can use to help sell the realism. Computer effects consist of digital imagery and camera tricks to create the same kind of objects and scenery. When computer graphics are employed well, the audience is left scratching their heads, wondering if what they just saw was a CGI man in a metal suit, or if it was actually Robert Downey Jr. in a practical costume. Then again, when special effects are done poorly, we get this. However, the same can be said for practical effects. Practical effects done poorly look like actors in expressionless rubber costumes, but when practical effects are done well and filmed in a convincing manner, they're just as incredible as anything else. So the debate between which is better, practical effects or computer effects, is a pretty silly one when you consider the effectiveness of each in the hands of the right people. Movies like 300, The Abyss, Inception, The Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and Man of Steel are rich with computer-generated imagery. These movies are on the Visual Effects Society's list of the most influential visual effects films ever made because they showed us things that we had never seen before. They captured actor performances that we had never been able to capture, and they contributed to cinema in a technological way that changed filmmaking forever. Unfortunately, when it comes to creating special effects today, many directors and CG artists demonstrate a major lack of self-control. Viggo Mortensen, who played Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, said that as the movies progressed, director Peter Jackson lost more and more restraint when it came to his use of CGI. It's why, by the end of the third movie, Orlando Bloom's Legolas character could do this. There was little thought given to gravity in this scene, how the weight of Legolas, however light he may be, would influence the movements of the animal's trunk, or how the flailing momentum of the dying beast would affect the movements of Legolas. The physics of the scene were compromised for a bad stylistic choice. This same poor decision-making got even worse in the Hobbit trilogy. Look at him run up those falling stones, it's so adorable. Look at Godzilla in the 2014 movie, where he moves in a manner realistic to something of his immense size and incalculable weight. Compare that to Godzilla from 2024's Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, who runs like one of the Avengers going into battle. Seriously? Come on, I mean, I love Godzilla, but this is crap. Look at him, he's so light on his feet. A Godzilla Legolas. And this is a large part of the problem in today's movies. It's not that studios are using too much CGI, it's that they're using too much CGI badly. There's nothing glaringly wrong in this shot from Terminator Genesis. I mean, I can tell that something's off about it, but it takes a few watches to realize that the heavy robot tumbling down the highway at 50 miles per hour is somehow managing to bounce and flip like a child's toy. I can understand that the director did this because he needed the Terminator to end with his face through the windshield for the hilarious little gag that happens next.
Nice to see you.
And he accomplished this by discarding all the physics of how gravity and speed influences the movement of weight, and all of it for nothing more than a silly joke, because faces into windows are just so funny.
Get out.
Scenes from movies like the Fast and the Furious franchise and Transformers willfully abandon scientific concepts like weight and motion, and yeah, okay, you know what? Sometimes it looks awesome, and I don't mind a little gravity-defying action from time to time, but holy Toledo, Ohio, that landing should have turned Vin Diesel into a meat patty. Windshields are not airbags, people. Oy. While we're on the subject of CGI, I want to discuss color grading, or color grading if you want to get pretentious about it, but more specifically, digital color grading, because it has gone hand in hand with effects work pretty much since its invention. Like CGI, digital color grading has been misused and abused just as often, but it's a filmmaking subtlety that's a little harder to pick up on. Color grading has actually been a part of filmmaking ever since color movies were a thing, but it used to be a chemical process called color timing. Blah blah blah, technical mumbo jumbo. Here's the point. Traditionally, movies were shot on film. This meant that a single shot could vary in between takes depending on changing time of day, the differences in lighting conditions between sets and locations. To resolve this issue, it was necessary to run through the edited film and apply color adjustments to various shots.
Conventional lab work actually is fairly restricting. I mean, you've got three primary colors you can balance between, red, green, and blue.
So it's a hit and miss process.
In the late 1990s, however, digital coloring techniques took the cumbersome lab work out of color grading, allowing filmmakers to control a much broader range of color. It wasn't until the year 2000 that digital color grading really took off, after Joel and Ethan Coen gorgeously illustrated the potential of digital filmmaking in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The reason for color grading the entire film, they said, was to distract from the movie's realism by making it look like a sepia-toned photograph. To say this was brilliant for its time is an understatement. Color grading can be used to wonderful effect. In 1999, The Matrix masterfully used color grading as a storytelling tool to help distinguish scenes from the real world to scenes that took place in a computer simulation. Today, however, color grading is applied to almost every major motion picture, and here's why that may not always make sense. Take Jurassic World, for example. The point of the dinosaur effects in a movie like this is about blending computer-generated creatures into a real-world environment and making it look as realistic as possible. When you apply bad color grading, the movie is given the look of a fantasy world, which actually fights the realism the computer-generated images are trying to create. Now, this works for something like The Lord of the Rings, something that takes place in another realm, but it doesn't work as well in Jurassic World, which is supposed to take place in our realm. This is partly why so many people consider the effects in the original Jurassic Park to look better than those created 22 years later for Jurassic World. That's not to say the computer-generated dinosaurs in Jurassic Park were better, because technically they weren't. But due to the more realistic coloring, the special effects blend better with the photography, and the result is something that looks more believable. This is why the effects in the most recent Planet of the Apes trilogy look so incredibly good, because along with investing in quality CGI, the filmmakers didn't ruin everything with poor color grading. Like Jurassic Park, it's the actual world with actual earth tones, and the result is an effect so convincing you forget you're looking at a computer-generated image. The issue of modern color grading is even distorting classic movies. As older films are being released in high definition for the first time, modern colorists are tampering with the look of the original film. Movies like Jurassic Park, Aliens, Lord of the Rings, and The Matrix have all experienced senseless color tampering. The motivation for this is market pressure, both real and imagined, to produce a film that looks more in line with what modern audiences are used to seeing. Many fans of the original movies believe this is distorting our view of classic films and ruining the vision of the original directors, and they would prefer it if colorists would just
get away from her, you bitch!
At the end of the day, it's not color grading or CGI that's ruining movies, but the lazy and/or misunderstood manner in which these tools are being applied. If certain color grading is a filmmaker's staple, like Michael Bay's oversaturation or Zack Snyder's crushed blacks, okay, well, that's an artist's preference. More power to him. But how far can they push these tricks before it becomes a detriment to their films?
The judgment is death.
The last thing I want to consider is cameras. More specifically, cameras generated by a computer in a digital environment. When it comes to filming on digital sets, or even motion capture, too many creators forget that movies are supposed to take place in some semblance of real life, and therefore the camera that films the situation needs to exist in a real-life location. The audience needs the camera to occupy a physical space in order to maintain a frame of reference. Even though everything else in the scene might look 100% real, the effect can be ruined by a digital camera that moves like it's in a video game. Compare the wildly out-of-control camera movement in this scene from The A-Team to the more grounded work in Avatar. Filmed almost entirely within a digital environment, the camera never forgets its point of reference. It moves with a storytelling purpose, keeping within the perspectives of the main characters. If the characters are on the ground, so is the camera. If the characters are in the air, the camera follows. This is good, reliable point-of-view storytelling. Ask yourself, which shot has more emotional impact? Watching the characters run as the missiles come in behind them, or watching the inanimate missile fall with no visible characters to anchor the shot? In the Avatar example, the camera moves with a storytelling purpose. In the example from Pearl Harbor, the camera moves with a stylistic one. One of these methods demonstrates a great way to tell a story.
One of them does not.
And this is the danger creators run into when filming in digital environments. The freedom it affords filmmakers emboldens too many of them to shoot in a style that serves no storytelling purpose. The problem of moving a computer-generated camera through a digital environment manifests differently in this scene from The Hobbit. When the camera quickly sweeps hundreds of feet through the digital environment, the scale of the place comes off like a miniature model set, with tiny people composited in. The irony is that old-school miniatures were shot in a way to avoid looking tiny, with slow camera movements that acted as if they were traversing over hundreds of feet instead of hundreds of inches. I hate to bash on my main lizard Godzilla again, but look at the way the camera moves in this shot. The scale of Godzilla and Kong is completely gone. I could go on and on and on, but in closing, modern technology isn't the problem. Modern technology is amazing, but the quality and amount of that technology has advanced so fast that only a few people have enough knowledge of it to use it well. It's almost like filmmakers have too many tools at their disposal these days. It's the proverbial kid in a candy store mentality, and when you've got all the sweets you could ever want at your disposal, guess what? You get fat. And maybe all this unnecessary weight is what has been killing the quality of movies for almost 2 decades. While the quality of television seems to be getting better, television studios don't have the big budgets for big technology. Instead, they pour their money into telling quality stories with well-developed characters. That is what audiences have always wanted, and no amount of new technology or 3D gimmicks or pandering to certain demographics is going to change the fact that people just want to see good stories with good characters. Thankfully, in recent years, directors like Christopher Nolan, Ridley Scott, George Miller, and Christopher McQuarrie are pushing back against the overuse of green screen and digital imagery. There are some directors out there insisting on more sets, more props, and more practical effects. These filmmakers are leading the way to reclaim the art of movie making. Let's hope their ideas catch on. Otherwise, this magic technology brew that Hollywood hopes is going to save it might just send everything up in smoke.